be you're not going to have my questions in, so if you can sort of answer in a full sentence. Yeah. So tell me a bit about what you do, what you'd ask an official to do in pre-game.
Well, there is no standard pre-game conference. I think you find that from country to country it's different. There are a lot of similarities in some of the content, but nobody has yet come out with like a global template and say this is it. But the good thing about pre-game is that there's one thing for sure: if you don't prepare, you prepare to fail. It's a simple little slogan. You've got to have a pre-game, and it doesn't matter if you're refereeing with somebody who you see regularly. You've always got to go through the process of what can we anticipate in this game, and there are different, there's all sorts of different pre-games that you can do, but this is the one that I use for the Europeans. I'm not saying everybody's adopted it, and I know that in the UK the Scots have one, the Welsh have one, and the English have one. But when you come to a game, everybody gets physically warmed up, and then you've got to start thinking about what we're going to do when we walk into the court and prepare for the game to start. What are we going to think about when we're in the locker room? And the best place to have a pre-game is in a quiet area. If you've got your own private dressing room, that's ideal. If not, go find a quiet place where you can sit, not stand, sit. You've got to be relaxed when you talk about, it could be 2 referees, it could be 3 referees. And if you've got any sense, it's to involve the table officials as well. A lot of referees don't involve the table officials, because you really, if it's local basketball, 2 referees, 3 table officials. So you're talking about a team of 5 that you have to talk about. What we're going to talk about, predominantly the early part of the pre-game will be focusing on what the referees do, but there is an attachment to everything for table officials. Like I say, if the first point is out of bounds, if the ball goes out of bounds on the game, it's not just the referees, the table officials. The table officials have to stop the clock, stop the 24. And what happens when the ball goes out of bounds? There has to be eye contact between the officials and the table, because you want to find out if, let's say, it's your decision. So you're going to look at your partner as you make the decision, because what we don't want is this. I'm saying this way and he's saying the other way. And the third element is having a look at the table to make sure that the clock is stopped. So that's the first thing, is about communicating with the eyes and necessarily verbally communicating. I don't think there's enough verbal reinforcement of decision making. Most people have a good voice, so why don't you use it? The ball is out of bounds, it's a yellow ball, it's a white ball, this and that. So reinforce your decision so there's no ifs and buts. That's the first thing, cooperation. And then there's the mechanics of things, because yes, mechanics are part and parcel of the game. But like the rule book, you cannot referee a game with the rule book in one pocket and the mechanics book in the other. It's because if you go on the court with a rule book and a mechanics book, you ain't never going to be a good referee. But we have to think about where we can and cannot involve mechanics. So there are situations where you have to switch from lead to trail, and there are situations where you don't need to. So the good thing was, over the last few years, the number of switches have been decreased. If it's 3-person officiating or even 2-person officiating, it comes much easier now, because I think there are a lot of unnecessary switches where things could be, like, for example, if you make a decision in the back court, and according to the mechanics, because you've called a foul, you have to switch to the opposite side of the court. Why? Because you're right there next to where the ball is going to come in. So you might as well make your signal and bring the ball in here. It's not necessary to switch the whole length of the court. That's one thing. And then we have substitutions, which involves the table again, where the table has to know that who's going out and who's coming in. They have a responsibility, as well as the referees, to make sure that there's not 6 players on the court. So that's an important thing. Timeouts is when a coach comes to the table or sends a message to the table officials stop the game with the signal and then make the timeout. So that's visual and audible communication to the floor officials. So they come to a point in the middle of the court, or maybe close to the table, where they will have a 50 seconds of a breather where they can catch up with how we're doing, what is, any problems, and so on and so forth. So timeouts are important. And involved with the timeout is, after 50 seconds, the table officials will sound the horn and say, you got 10 seconds to get your players back on the court. Because what we don't want is an unnecessary delay of the game. So that's also important with the table officials. But to remember the table officials, that any coach, before the referee hands the ball to restart the game, suddenly can whip a substitute in. So you've got the table officials have to anticipate that there may be a last second substitution or even another timeout from the other team. So you can't say no, because we don't start any conflict with either team. That's the sort of simple gist of the mechanics and running of the game. Then in the pre-game you have to talk about specific issues regarding what's likely to happen during the game. Charge block. Involved with charge block is flopping and faking, which in a simple word is cheating, where players feint falling down or head fakes, throwing their arms and heads in the air. That's a big issue for referees, because it's an experiential thing, because the more knowledge you have, more experience you have, you're probably going to have a better analysis of whether this is real or this is cheating. And there's no easy way to it. Even some rookies can be pretty good at it. It's a very individual thing. You have to look at a situation, analyze it, and make a decision. Hopefully you'll do the right one, but nobody's perfect. So you got that. Then we got the biggest bugbear in the game at the moment is hand checking, where hands are one hand, two hands. As somebody's running past, you stick one hand on the stomach and try and slow them down. This is really defeating the flow of the game. And I don't think that referees really look hard enough to see all it. It's a very, very, shall we say, it's a very cunning tactic, because when players are moving and crisscrossing, it's very difficult to see little hands here, there and everywhere. So hand checking is a very important thing that the referees have to look for, and if they feel that somebody's getting an advantage and creating a disadvantage for an opponent, they've got to get on top of it at the beginning of the game. Then we have post play, which is where generally you get the biggest guys on the court. Boom, boom, boom. And not all contact is a foul. You've got to accept the fact that basketball is a physical game. It's not wrapped in cotton wool. and you can get some quite brutal moments which may be legal or even, well, probably illegal. But there are still some people have a philosophy is let the big men play. Well, yes, you can let the big people play as long as you control it. You cannot have a rough game. Yes, you can have a physical game, but you can't allow the players to actually run the game, so to speak. You're still in charge. So we want the game to flow. Everybody wants to enjoy it. Then we have the act of shooting. There needs to be a lot of emphasis on what do we look at. The referee who's next to the shooting situation, he's got a lot of things to do. First of all, he's got to make sure, has the defensive player got a legal position? Is he stationary? Is he straight? Arms straight? And then we look at the offensive player. Is he got position? Is he going up? Yes, that's probably one of the spectators complaining. And is he going up or is he going forwards? Because it's important to have that window between the defense and the offense. You can't be straight lined. You've got to be able to see through that window so you can see them both going up. So what's the referee got to look with the defensive player? As the ball is coming up, if the defensive player uses his hand, can he strip the ball legally? Which means he hits the ball and the ball goes down and the hands are there and the ball's on the floor. Or has it hit the hand or the arm? So that's the first part. We say the upward movement of the ball, can it be stripped? Then as the shooting player comes above head height and starts the release of jumping before shooting the ball, is there any forward movement either by the offensive player or by the defensive player? Because we have these little tippy toes creeping forwards so they'll make contact when the offensive player lands again, which you're not allowed to do. And then of course you have the point of release of the ball. Is there any contact on the elbow, the arm, the wrist, or even actually on the hand itself? So that's a very important element which has been really emphasized in the last few seasons, about this importance of knowing step by step. That's active shooting. Then we have rebounding situations. Again, when a shot goes up to the basket, you've got defensive player boxing out to try and get the offensive players to get the ball off the ring. And then there's a lot of, again, it's about what's the defense likely to do and what's the offense likely to do. You can have defender players backing in, you can have offensive players jumping over and on to defensive players. And there are two things. There's over the back and on the back, because you've got people who can really jump, and if a player can jump and stretch over the defensive player to get the ball without making bodily contact, that is over the back, and that's legal. But too many times it gets called as a foul because, oh, it must have been a foul because he's gone over. No, it's not. On the back is where there is physical contact, either from the defensive backing in or the offense jumping on. And the classic case of hand on the elbow, on the shoulder, to help me get up and get the rebound. And that's predominantly by the offensive players. So that's and then we have elements of unsportsmanlike and technical fouls. Well, there's been a lot of discussion in the last 2 years about what is unsportsmanlike and not is unsportsmanlike. And the good development that we've had is to try and decrease these cheap fouls that stop transition plays. So now, if there's no attempt to play the ball, you can call an unsportsmanlike foul, which is 2 shots in possession. And then if the player is in his front court and there's no defender in front of him, in front of the basket, Any contact from the side, laterally, or from behind by a defensive player is immediately an unsportsmanlike foul. So this is a key element for referees to think about and make sure that they get the call right. Then you have the reactions to referees' calls. Players don't like the call, coach doesn't like the call. Now you have to deal with what we all say is the old school conflict. Now you can have the three wise monkeys: hear no, see no, speak no. Yes, sometimes it works, because do not be influenced by familiarity. One of the problems that referees have to deal with is they know the coach, they know the players, especially if it's local basketball. It's a lot of familiarity. So do you enforce the same rule element with people you know as opposed to people you don't know? You can't.